Hey friends! In my last video I shared the news about how World's Edge, the management studio in charge of the Age of Empires franchise, is planning to rebuild Age of Mythology in the Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition engine, linking this in the description. I don't actually have more news today, but there were so many misunderstandings in the comments both here on YouTube and elsewhere that I wanted to create a follow-up to provide some clarity. This time, let's clearly and concisely define terminology, so that we are all on the same page and can better manage our own expectations. For those new around here, I am a professional game designer having worked on Age of Mythology Extended Edition, Halo Wars 2, Total War Warhammer 2 and 3, and now I'm the lead systems designer at Grimlore Games on an upcoming ARPG game, Project Minerva. Given my experience, you can definitely trust me with these basic definitions, but bear in mind that there definitely is room for interpretation about implications for Age of Mythology Retold, as we have very little info to go on still. So I encourage you to think for yourselves. The developers are definitely keeping an eye on what the community is discussing across different platforms, so sharing your wide range of opinions is extremely valuable. And I believe this can and will impact the final product, so keep it up. The first thing I want to clear up is what a game engine is and isn't. This will be key to understanding what rebuilding Age of Mythology in Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition's engine means. Without getting too technical, you can think of it as a vehicle for delivering features and tools for the developers to work with. Here, features can mean stuff including code that drives gameplay systems, such as the trade caravan mechanic, but can also mean something grander, such as the framework that drives the scenario editor tool, or even the cross-play multiplayer networking. The engine also defines the graphical feature set that the artists can have their assets make use of. In the end, very little is impossible to change in an engine, as you can always have coders improve or rework individual areas. But this can be a costly process and have unforeseen repercussions due to interconnected systems. Something I have noticed is that lots of people worry that the gameplay of Age of Empires 3 will carry over. This is a massive misunderstanding. Let's take the card system as an example. This is a game system purely created for Age of Empires 3. It is content and not a requirement of the engine. You can use the Age of Empires 3 engine to create gameplay that excludes the card system. This can be said for circular maps, units using torches against buildings, and batch production. These are all gameplay design decisions, and none of this needs to be kept around for Age of Mythology Retold. The same goes for art that is specific to Age of Empires 3. Possibly even terrain textures, sound effects, and more. You can just create new assets from scratch that are appropriate for Age of Mythology and resemble the originals but look modern. This is what I expect the developers will do. I think they will rebuild the art, animation, and sound assets, gameplay mechanics, civilization structure, maps, and campaign missions more or less as seen in the original Age of Mythology, but modernized and with tweaks here and there on a case-by-case basis. What I'd like you to take away from all this is that with the right effort, an engine can allow for a vast variety of experiences. Remember how Warcraft 3 spawned Dota via community modding? The horizon is fairly broad indeed. Given that both Age of Mythology and Age of Empires 3 use the so-called Bang engine, with Age of Empires 3 being the direct successor of Age of Mythology, and a good amount of features from Age of Mythology still present, at least in traces, it should be very possible to once again iterate on the Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition engine, which also is a major improvement over the original, and then ensure that it can support Age of Mythology's needs. This could in fact be a faster process than getting Age of Mythology's engine up to standards, although at the cost of all the content needing to be set up from scratch, as their structure will not be in place whatsoever. Considering the complexity of the remake process, it is natural for some concerns to surface. What if some features are lost due to time constraints and cuts? What if some parts of the game will feel subpar compared to the original due to half-baked implementation? What if certain content gets specifically changed to fit limitations in the Age of Empires 3 engine just to save time, and it's a gameplay compromise? One such area I would be willing to bet will be compromised on is custom scenarios. You know, the fun community-made game modes you would play in multiplayer, such as Tiny, Forest Escape, Zelda, Mythology, and others. Custom campaigns, of course, included. There is almost absolutely no way these will be compatible between all the versions of Age of Mythology. In a scenario where modders are extremely lucky, a conversion tool might be created, but I highly doubt that there would be investment into this. I will lose my mind in amazement if they somehow make them work. It's a shame, because all multiplayer environments demand a massive casual community to thrive. You can't just pray and hope for 1v1 and team ranked modes to carry the weight of multiplayer, and custom games definitely fill the space for low stress, fun sessions for all skill levels. I also have limited confidence in original community-made random maps being compatible. Obviously, any data and content mods would need to start from scratch too. So yeah, modding will take the hardest initial hit from the remake, that is my prediction. It is no secret that remakes are a risky business. They can fail or succeed spectacularly. Just look at the recent Dead Space or The Last of Us remakes as an example. But what are remakes? And what's the difference between them and re-releases and remasters? A re-release would be when you take an existing older game, optionally slightly improve it, ensure it runs on modern hardware and operating systems, and that's it. Age of Mythology Extended Edition was exactly this. Sadly though, it removed as much as it added. Yikes. A remaster is when you significantly improve and modernize an existing game. The gameplay's core should stay the same in these for the most part, but the visuals, sounds, and auxiliary systems such as networking should ideally be greatly improved. These also need to run well on modern hardware and operating systems, of course. Age of Empires Definitive Editions are great examples of this, with 2 and 3 being far more impressive products in the end than Game 1. Lastly, a remake is when you ditch the old game and recreate it essentially from scratch in a new game engine, usually a more modern one. Oftentimes, remakes do not look or feel that similar to the original and instead aim to improve the experience in as many ways as possible, but still aim to maintain the spirit of the original. But they can of course be very conservative and have extremely faithful gameplay. We'll have to see where exactly Age of Mythology will land on this spectrum, but it definitely classifies as a remake. Given that Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition's engine is not that alien, this might sound a bit more dramatic than it really is, but I don't want to make any of this sound easy. The dev team 100% has their work cut out for them, and I wish them the best of luck in the process. As much as I have already raised concerns over what can go wrong, I want to make clear that there are definitely benefits to creating a remake. Here's my top picks. The remake presents an opportunity to clean up and improve some less beloved parts of the game. Naval gameplay, god power reusability, the Chinese DLC's content, and some of the worst campaign missions. These can all get a nice facelift. Even completely new gameplay can be incorporated should the developers be so inclined. More on this in future videos. A large portion of graphics and networking tech, including the ability to port to the Windows Store that's already in place in Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition, doesn't need to be developed again. These are massive savings for the dev team, and in theory should result in a better final product thanks to the freed up resources. The developers that have been working with the Age of Empires 3 toolset will feel at home and need very little workflow adjustments. This is fantastic for efficiency, as any time you spend training staff with new tools is time you spend not working on the project itself. Granted, Age of Mythology would have similar processes, but this is still a non-zero amount. Like I said earlier, communicating your ideas to the developers is more important now than ever, while they are still actively working on the game. Perhaps some of your best ones can actually be in the final product, or at least in updates. For this purpose, I have created an idea board where you can upvote each other's ideas on my RTS esports website MetaPlace. Feel free to post yours and cast your votes. I will be covering whatever emerges there. This is also being shared with the developers. Next up, I aim to work on some opinion pieces about autoqueue, Atlanteans, map randomness, UI and controls, and more. Can't promise specific dates sadly, considering that I work full-time and also run the MetaPlace project, and naps are important to me. So make sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell to see when these land. Also feel free to check out my links in the description. You can find me on pretty much any platform under the sun. See you in the next video.